Losing a child is like carrying two stones in your pockets at all times. You get used to the weight, but the weight is there all the time.
Viewer discretion is advised for this educational documentary. Welcome back to Dark Case Documentaries. I bring you true crime, disturbing stories and other things that you may later regret knowing with regular uploads every week. Please do join the quickly growing, incredibly supportive Dark Case family by hitting subscribe now and turning on notifications. Thank you so much to all of my patrons. If your name is on screen right now, then you're a legend. Our love and respect goes out to all those that knew and loved Lauren and all those affected by this dark case. Auburn, Alabama is a quintessential college town. There's lots of coffee shops and bars with live bands. Kind of cultural, but kind of cool. With a population of about 75,000, it has a small town feel. That is, even though it's the largest city in eastern Alabama and houses 30,000 students and staff at Auburn University. Auburn is a prestigious school, one of the South's largest universities. It was also Lauren Burke's dream school. Lauren Ashley Burke was born on December 30th, 1989. She was born in Marietta, Georgia to parents Jim and Vivian. She was a happy girl who always looked on the bright side of life. It was said if you looked into her eyes, you just saw happiness. Along with her boyfriend Sean, she was in her first year at Auburn University. It was just 2 hours from her hometown, and it was the perfect school for someone planning a career in photography and marketing. She lived in an off-campus residence hall, and whilst at the university she became a member of the Delta Gamma sorority. She was doing college life right, and on the surface it looked like she was living the perfect life. Lauren was really just getting started. On March 4th, 2008, 18-year-old Lauren began her day by having breakfast. She met with boyfriend Sean at the on-campus coffee shop. The couple were happy and carefree. They were chatting about upcoming assignments and their plans for their upcoming spring break. They both then set off for class. The semester was coming to an end, so both of their schedules were pretty light. At 11 AM when classes were over, Lauren called her dad and told him about her spring break plans. On that call, she also mentioned an upcoming dental appointment. She then went to Sean's dorm to take a nap. That was before an 8:30 PM study session at the library with her friend Michael. Everything seemed normal. It was just another day at college. At around 8 PM, Lauren left Sean's and walked to her black 2001 Honda Civic, a car that was parked near the back of a parking lot near his dorm. The library wasn't far and she knew Michael would be waiting for her. 8:30 PM came and went, and Lauren strangely did not show up at the library. Michael called Lauren to see where she was, but she didn't answer. Panic began to rise. Where was Lauren? After a few more frantic calls, Michael finally got a hold of her. She had forgotten about a birthday dinner for a friend, therefore she wouldn't make it to their study session. However, the call ended abruptly, kind of strangely. Michael then simply returned to his textbook. Reading and revision don't do themselves. At around 9 PM, 5 miles north of Auburn University, several motorists were driving along Highway 147. There, they saw a horrifying sight in the road. Near the left turn for Lee Road 72, there was a girl on the road. She was completely unclothed and crying. Her body was covered in road rash and she was waving her arms at them. The motorists stopped and blocked the traffic from both directions. When they got out of their vehicles, they found the girl lying on her back in the middle of the road. Red vital fluid was everywhere. She was taking deep, slow breaths and was gasping for air. The motorists called 911. A police unit rushed to the scene. They arrived there at 9:12 PM. But sadly, already, it seemed that it was too late. The girl in the road was unresponsive. They started CPR until EMS showed up and took over. However, the girl no longer had a pulse or a heartbeat. Emergency services all battled to bring her back to life. As she was rolled onto a backboard, EMS discovered a firearm wound to her upper back torso. She had been blasted in the back. She was then transported to the East Alabama Medical Center, but there, tragically, she was pronounced dead at 9:27 p.m. Back at the university campus, officers were responding to a very different kind of incident. Lauren's black 2001 Honda Civic was engulfed in flames near Hinton Field. As crowds surrounded the burning car, responding officers tried to track down the owner, but they had no luck. The owner was nowhere to be found. They ran the license plate through the system and found out who the owner actually was. It was a man named Jim Burk. When they finally got a hold of Jim, he explained the car was used by his daughter, Lauren, who was on campus. Officers told Jim that Lauren wasn't near her car. In fact, they weren't sure where she was at all. After hanging up, Jim called Lauren's mother, Vivian, to see if she had heard anything from Lauren. However, she hadn't. Vivian called around to see if anyone else had heard from Lauren, but no one else had either. Without thinking, Jim started driving towards Auburn. On the way, the Auburn Police Department Assistant Chief, Tommy Dawson, phoned Jim and asked him to drive towards a local hospital. A young woman, as we know, had been found on the highway. Officers needed him to confirm whether it was indeed the body of his daughter, Lauren. Father Jim said about this incident, she was lying on a gurney with a white sheet up to her neck, like she was sleeping like an angel. I looked at her. I said, "Oh my God." I kissed her forehead, and then I just left. An autopsy later concluded that Lauren suffered a single gunshot that entered her upper left back. It had punctured both lungs before exiting through her upper right arm. She had sadly bled to death within 2 or 3 minutes. But how did this happen? How did Lauren get to Highway 147 while her car was found burning on campus? Had she perhaps been abducted? If so, was she abducted on campus or off? What about this birthday dinner? There were so many questions and so few answers. Investigators searched through Lauren's burnt-out car. They were able to recover scraps of Lauren's burned clothing, along with a spent .38 caliber bullet. It appeared that whatever happened to Lauren had definitely taken place in her own car, which meant her car must have left the campus at some point. Investigators then searched the last place where Lauren had been seen alive, Sean's dorm. However, they came up empty. He himself had no idea what had happened to his girlfriend after she left his dorm for the study session with Michael. This obviously left investigators to speak with Michael. He told them about the strange abrupt phone call that he had with Lauren. He said it sounded like she was in a car during their conversation, which was confusing but now made more sense to him. While detectives were starting to put the puzzle pieces together, they still couldn't figure out who had abducted Lauren and why. 2 days later, on March the 6th, there were still no answers. But luckily, investigators soon had a strong lead. Whoever killed Lauren had also taken her debit card, and in this common, classic mistake, they used it in multiple locations on the night of her passing. At 9:17 p.m, just 5 minutes after police responded to the call about the motorists finding Lauren, her credit card was used to buy around $15 worth of gas at a station on the very same road where she had been found. Later, the card was again used to buy gas in Atlanta, and then groceries at a Kroger store in LaGrange, Georgia. Investigators were able to obtain a photo of a man using Lauren's card. They sent the photo off for enhancement in the hopes that they could identify this strange man. But before they could make an identification, the man struck again, this time in Noonan, Georgia. On March the 7th at about 9:55 a.m, Georgia police responded to a report of a possible carjacking in the parking lot of a Walmart on Bullsboro Drive. A man told officers that he was exiting his vehicle when he saw a man walking toward him with a gun. He quickly got back into his car and then watched as a man changed directions and approached an elderly woman who was getting into her car after exiting the store. The woman later said the man hit her in the back of the head, then stuck a firearm to the side of her head, and that he told her he was going to kill her and take her money and car. He shoved her into the passenger side floor and then took her wallet. He then got into the driver's seat and backed out of the parking lot in an attempt to leave. But the witness began to follow the man, which freaked him out. The assailant then jumped from the woman's car and got into a silver Chrysler. The witness called the police. Walmart loss prevention employees were able to provide officers with a tag number for the silver Chrysler. The tag on the vehicle was registered to a 23-year-old man named Courtney Lockhart. It gave an address in Smiths, Alabama. Approximately 30 minutes later, police issued a be on the lookout or BOLO for Courtney's vehicle. They received a call from Phoenix City, Alabama police. They had located him driving the silver Chrysler. He was speeding through a construction zone on Alabama Highway 80. Phoenix City motorcycle officer Williams pulled the Chrysler over. He asked Courtney to exit the vehicle, but he would not get out. When backup arrived, Courtney struggled with Williams, and then he managed to get back into the Chrysler and sped off. Williams and the other officers all raced after him. The chase reached speeds of 80 miles per hour. And Courtney even went off-road a couple of times. Eventually, Courtney got out of his car and began running. Then he was quickly apprehended by police. When officers patted him down, Courtney did not have any weapons, but he did have an iPod. After he was taken to the station, he was interviewed about the robbery and kidnapping that had occurred at Walmart earlier that day. Courtney then admitted to everything. When he was done confessing, investigators looked over the iPod that had been found on Courtney during his arrest. That iPod belonged to Lauren Burk. Auburn detectives were called in to interview Courtney about Lauren's murder. Surprisingly, he waived his rights and gave a full confession. Courtney told detectives he had no intent to end her life. He had only ever wanted to rob her. He explained that in the morning hours of March the 4th, he realized he needed gas for his car, which he was at that point living out of, but he didn't have any money. In his mind, this meant he would have to rob someone to fill up the tank. So he drove around the Auburn area all day looking for a victim. I don't mean to make light of this, but if I needed money for fuel, I would probably think of a more fuel-efficient way to do this, rather than driving around. But back to the case. In the evening hours, Courtney went to Auburn University campus and drove around there. After a while, he ended up stopping in a parking lot on top of a hill. He then watched as Lauren walked up to her car and slowly opened the driver's side door. Courtney then got out of his own car, firearm in hand, walked up behind Lauren, and told her to get into the car. Courtney said he shoved her in and she climbed into the passenger seat. He got in the driver's seat and asked how much money she had. He said Lauren didn't say anything at first. She just screamed. Courtney told investigators that he stayed calm, stating that he didn't say anything until she finally calmed herself down. Once she was no longer screaming, Lauren handed over $200 in cash and begged to leave. But Courtney didn't let her. Instead, he put the car in drive and took off. He made sure to keep his firearm pointed at Lauren at all times, while they sped north out of town. Bizarrely, Courtney said he told Lauren to take off her clothes. At first, she wouldn't do it, but eventually she did after he threatened her some more. And in a moment of real mental gymnastics, he explained that he did this not because he wanted to assault her, but because he thought she'd be less likely to escape if she was completely unclothed. As they drove, Lauren's study partner Michael started calling her. He was wondering where she was. After a few calls, Courtney told Lauren that she could answer the phone, but only if she made up an excuse for why she wasn't there. Lauren agreed. She finally answered the phone, and that's when she told Michael she had forgotten about a birthday dinner that had been arranged for a friend, and then she abruptly hung up. Courtney told investigators that as they drove away Highway 147 nearing Lee Road, he made a plan to turn around so they could head back to campus. But it was at this stage that the gun accidentally went off. He said they were both shocked and Lauren started screaming, and then he claimed she suddenly jumped out of the car of her own volition. Courtney said that he kept driving so that he could turn around at the next turnaround point, but there was already another truck turning around there, so he started heading straight back to campus. On the way back, he stopped and filled up Lauren's car with gas. He also splashed some petrol inside the car, then rolled the windows down so he wouldn't pass out from the fumes whilst driving back to campus. He parked Lauren's car in the same parking lot that he had abducted her from. He said that he took $46 of the $200 Lauren had offered him and then left the rest inside of the car. This could suggest that this was never really about the money. However, there was something in the car that took his fancy. He took Lauren's iPod and debit card and grabbed his gun. He left her keys in the ignition and her clothes inside the car. Courtney then set the car ablaze. He then left the campus and stopped to fill up his car with gas using Lauren's cash before leaving town. Now, Courtney was finished confessing, but investigators had a few doubts about his story. Why would he have forced Lauren to leave the campus with him if he only wanted to rob her? Why did he leave most of the money inside her car? It seemed more likely that he wanted to assault her, but he never got the chance to because she jumped out of the car. They also didn't believe Courtney's story that the gun accidentally went off. It would take way too much pressure to pull the trigger. It would take around 5 pounds of pressure if the hammer was cocked and 12 if it was not. Her injuries showed that the gun had been no more than a few inches away from Lauren when she was shot. For Courtney's story to be true, the gun would have had to have been much further away. 23-year-old Courtney Lockhart was charged with capital murder during the commission of robbery, capital murder during the commission of attempted violation, and capital murder during the commission of kidnapping. The prosecution sought the death penalty. Courtney pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. On November 8, 2010, Courtney's trial began in Lee County Circuit Court. The prosecution told the jury that Courtney kidnapped Lauren with the intent of robbing her and that he didn't accidentally kill her. He shot Lauren as she tried to escape, and then he left her for dead. Dr. Glenn King, a forensic psychologist for the prosecution, testified that Courtney Lockhart was absolutely not suffering from any kind of mental disease, nor any mental defect at the time he ended Lauren's life. Dr. King concluded that Courtney was not insane at the time of the murder because he engaged in a series of premeditated actions over a lengthy period of time that were all goal-directed towards the abduction. Courtney cased the area, destroyed the evidence, and fled the area. The defense, however, argued that the shooting was the irrational, unintentional act of a mentally unwell veteran who became impaired as a result of his service. Courtney had served in the army but had been discharged. The defense had multiple people, including Courtney's girlfriend, testify that after coming home from Iraq, he was withdrawn, paranoid, hypervigilant, and aggressive. On November the 18th, after deliberating for around 6 hours over a 2-day period, the jury found Courtney Lockhart guilty of capital murder during the course of a robbery and kidnapping. Jurors also decided on the penalty, whether Lockhart would serve life in prison without parole or be put to death. The jury unanimously recommended that Courtney be sentenced to life without parole. They could have recommended the death penalty, but they chose not to. Following the jury's decision, the judge said he needed some time to come up with a final sentence. Alabama is the only state that allows a judge to override a jury's decision regarding life or death sentences. On March 2nd, 2011, Courtney Lockhart's sentencing hearing was held. In the end, Judge Walker did not follow the jury's recommendation, and he sentenced Courtney Lockhart to the death penalty. In a vast 28-page single-space sentencing order, Judge Jacob Walker explained why he disagreed with the jury. He concluded that the kidnapping weighed heavily in favor of the death penalty, stating, "Lauren Burke was alone, unarmed, and she was chosen by Lockhart at random. The kidnapping is even more egregious because she was taken from a college campus, a place where students should feel safe, and was forced into her own car. Lockhart forced her to undress and held her at gunpoint in order to prevent her escape." The decision of the judge has been widely debated, and Courtney continues to appeal the judge's decision to override the jury. As of September 2022, Lockhart remains in the Holman Correctional Facility on death row. Do you think the punishment fits the crime here? Do you agree with the judge or the jury? What do you think can be done to avoid something like this happening again in the future? Please do let me know down in the comments. Be careful out there, and I'll see you soon.